everyone. Welcome to In Your Words, Dialect, People and Places. This is a Dialect and Heritage workshop. My name's Laura Kloss. I'm Engagement Officer for the Dialect and Heritage Project In Your Words, and I'm based at the Museum of East Anglian Life. Before we start, I just want to say a big thank you to a number of our partners, the Being Human, a Festival of Humanities, the Festival of Social Science, University of Leeds, Museum of East Anglian Life, of course, and the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Without all of this wouldn't be possible today. And thank you everyone for joining. If anyone needs a transcription, we will be posting a link in the chat if you need that. But before we start, what I really want to do is just get to know you all a little bit. Where are you from? And a question: how do you have your tea? How do you brew your tea? Do you mash it, soak it, mask it, or wet your tea? Please put your answers in the chat. I just want to know who we've got flooding in, and we've got 11 people here watching at the moment. So I hope that a few more will join as we're talking. As you will see on the right, whilst you're typing in your answers, we have a map here from the Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture. This is a word map from the Survey of English Dialects, which we did in the 50s. If you use mask, you're probably from Northumberland. If you're saying soak the tea leaves, you're probably from Cornwall. I'm a masher. So we've got some coming in now. I just make my tea. Yeah, that's true. And also people have been saying these are all words relating to tea leaves. And of course we use tea bags now a lot. But we've got brew coming through. Thanks, Bruce. Oh yeah, North Norfolk, I make my tea. Got lots of brewers out there. And then second question, nice to meet you all. What do you call these? So dialect in the UK is really, really rich. We have 3 images here. I'm wondering what you call these. So we've got this kind of sticky weed that you pick up when you go for a walk. People like my sister always used to grab it and throw it on my back as a joke. What do you call that? We've got this creepy spidery thingy, long legs that flies. What do you call that? And then the third image is a yummy small bread thing that you'd find in the bakery. Now this really does get people talking. If you could put your answers in the chat as well, we can. Oh, look, somebody said chickweed at you, that's why. But I've never heard chickweed for what I would call sticky willy. Sticky weed. Yes, Catherine, thank you. Lots of people are saying a daddy long legs. So in the Survey of English Dialects, which I will tell you about in a bit, they also recorded that people were calling the daddy long legs a grandfather fly in Essex, and a nanny spinner in Yorkshire, and a tailor tartan in Northumberland. That's a very strange one. I'll have to do a bit of etymology on that one. I wonder where that comes from. So Helen uses cleavers for the sticky willow. That's interesting. Not many people use cleavers anymore, but a few people I've met have recently when we've been on our road shows. Thank you for contributing that. A bap, yeah. George is saying he says bap. Thank you guys. Thanks for contributing. I'm just looking through your results now. Yeah, I've got somebody saying they say goosegrass. Yeah, so other words for the sticky willow. Goosegrass is one. Cleavers, fir bobs, burdock, and my favourite, devil guts. I haven't met anyone using that yet, but if you know anyone, please let me know. Yeah. So you might be wondering what dialect is, and there are many different words that we can use. And so some people think, is it accent? Is it slang? Is it just words? And at our project, we're kind of defining it as this. So it's a form of speech or writing that marks out and belonging to a specific geographical location or a particular group, and it's defined by 3 parts: so words, your grammar, and your accent. So your words, the different variations of the same words. So words such as ginnel, twitten, and snicket, they all mean alleyway. Ginnel and snicket, there's lots of there's actually quite I suppose an argument over which is the correct one up north. Twitten's from south, it's from Portsmouth and Sussex. So lots of different variations of the same word. Then the grammar, that's the way that your sentences are formed. Some examples of that: give it me or give it to me. Some people say those differently. And in East Anglia, I've heard a lot, instead of saying I'm going now, they say I'm now going, moving the now around. And then your accent, of course, is your pronunciation. So do you say scone or scone? Do you say castle or castle? And I'm kind of interchangeable. I'm kind of picking up everything, and it's fluid and it changes. And that's what we're going to talk about a bit more. I'm from, just so you all know, I was born in London. I was in Leeds for a bit. I have German heritage. I've got heritage from East Anglia as well. So I'm very mixed, and hence why I'm interested in language. So, and dialect is very important to our identities. It's both simultaneously inclusive and exclusive, and it is a strong symbol of our belonging and unity. But it can also impose particular linguistic tariffs. And I've been travelling around East Anglia quite a bit, taking our surveys to people and asking them what dialect means to them. And they've been telling me these exact things. They've been saying, well, one lady said that she, when she was at school, she was from the Midlands, she said when she was at school, her teachers told her not to use her accent or her dialect, and she said they beat it out of her because they said that she wasn't going to get a job if she had an accent. So she was at school in the 50s. And then another man I met from Yorkshire moved down to London. He was very proud of his accent, and it was a way of him meeting other people instantly from Yorkshire and building a community. And so he used it to his advantage in a place where he felt very different. He was able to connect with people. And so I'd really like to ask you, throughout this talk today, what does dialect mean to you? Are you proud of your dialect? Have you tried to change your dialect? Have you been told before not to speak with an accent? Those kind of things. And at this project, we're celebrating it. We want to keep these words alive, and I hope you want to as well. So please, in the chat, if you could also add what does dialect mean to you, and I'll ask you again at the end of the talk. So dialect, does it show present day diversity, or is it a window on the past? Now, I think it's both. Dialect is constantly changing with the time, and it both indicates how diverse our country is, but it also sheds an important light on the past. It can indicate how people used to speak in the past. And actually, in the Oxford English Dictionary, most local East Anglian dialect words are of purely Anglo-Saxon origin. They can be traced back and to being used in Anglo-Saxon times. And these include, and I've got a bit of a list here, you might know some of them: dicky for donkey, dodman for snail. We've got hutkin, which I love. I love this word hutkin. It reminds me a lot of the German word Handschuhe, which is glove, like hand and shoe. And you've got like a little hut for your kin, your finger. So finger protector. Moorkin for scarecrow, moorther. And actually, I've heard people recently using some of these. Dodman definitely is in use still. Moorther's still in use. And then we've got ranny for shrew and sowpig for woodlouse. Woodlouse is an incredible word for dialect difference and differentiation. And then one last, dean. If you're from Norfolk, there's lots of deans and sandy dunes. You might know that word. And many dialect words have a strong association with the activity of the past that is dying out or no longer survives. And some parts of our dialect is very much at risk of being lost as our lifestyles, our relationship to the land and industries change. And I've just found this this kind of extract, this picture here from one of our fieldworker notebooks, who was interviewing a chap in Mendlesham in 1959, a man called Mr. Hunt, and he was asked, "What can you sometimes see around the moon?" It's kind of a bleak question, but he was trying to ask what. Well, the word he was looking for is halo. The dialect word he was looking for, halo, and Mr. Hunt came up with the word that he used being burr, B-U-R-R, and here it is. I don't know if you know the International Phonetic Alphabet, but on the left you can see it there written, and then on the right you can see a saying, far burr near rain. And that is a saying that's, I think, very rarely used at the moment, but meaning if you've got a big halo, you can expect some rain soon. And the rain, well, the halo, sorry, is kind of created by the cloud. And yeah, farmers used that as a way of telling what the weather was going to be like. And so our relationship has changed as our farming techniques, our relationship to language, our relationship to words have changed as our kind of modes of production. I really like that example. And then another word I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that kind of, again, gives us a window on the past that also is being lost. And this is an important word for the Museum of East Anglian Life. We have, I don't know if you know what a flail is, but we have this object in the Museum of East Anglian Life. It is an instrument for threshing, and it would be used to separate the grains from their husks by beating the grain by hand, using this and hitting the grain on the ground. Very laborious, very difficult task. And in East Anglia, there's three. And when we did the Survey of English Dialects in the 50s, there were three words being used, and we have recorded. And those are frail, F-R-A-I-L, a stick and a half, which is more commonly known, and a Dick and a Daniel. And we actually have a recording of a man called Bert Jarvis using two of these words, actually, frail and stick and a half, and talking about the ways they used to farm before mechanisation. Here we go.
The dialect of Kersey, Suffolk. Bert Jarvis, aged 79, native, a retired farm worker and baker, recorded in his home by Stanley Ellis in July 1959.
I recollect these house thrashes. What he should be drawn about by horses. one come over here and they say a band, and the first one was a thrashing that I used to use a stick and a half. I used to call that a file. What I used to brush the comb with these bits. Whatever would the amount mean thing today to see that going in the thing and this gone. And the comb is coming out in the side gone. And all dressed ready from that. Wonderful lady. I've seen all that kind.
Now he's done this thrashing with the braille then?
No, I never did use a file. Never did. Of course, I wasn't very old, but I've been down and seen them old wings right every time I hit it. I'd go right round the lower corner what I laid out, and then they'd come back the other one, and then they'd go that one and just shake it up and give it a tap over, and there's the corn.
And it's wonderful hearing him talk about this memory of the past. I mean, he's recollecting something that he actually never took part in himself, but he still knows the words, and that's kind of a real moment in time, because these words now are very rarely used. And those photographs are from the Museum of East Anglian Lives collection, and you can see the first one was the horse-drawn reaper binder that was threshing the corn, and that was the replacement for the stick and a half, which you saw in the second picture, and the men beating the corn on the ground. And this nicely brings me on to what the Survey of English Dialects was intended to do and why they did it. So, and it was directly as a response to this kind of worry that words were going to be lost. And Professor Harold Orton at the the Department of English in Leeds University saw around, it was in the 50s after the Second World War, people were moving around, and he wanted to make sure that the dialect at the time was preserved for future generations. So him and his team set out to record it, and it was a great undertaking. And the survey which they produced is now very well renowned. It's still used by linguists today. It's one of the biggest surveys of its kind that was ever recorded. And so they went to mainly rural communities where they believed that the best dialect would be found. They went to over 300 locations, and they asked 1,000 questions plus. Each person was they had three people doing each survey, and so now we have over 400,000 items of information that have been gathered, and an extensive dictionary of dialect words from all over England. And it really created a most incredible snapshot of how English was spoken by people born as early as 1860. So, Victorian words, Victorian dialects, older even, as I've been saying. And all of this can now be found in the Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture, and in there it's just a wonderful collection of the field workers' response books, which I've been showing you, with the phonetic alphabet and the words that people are saying written down, the word maps I've been showing you, the recordings and photographs. And if you're interested at all in researching dialect, this is an amazing resource. And there is as you can see from the slide, there is a search function which allows you to look up your area and see what records we have from your area. So I'd really urge you to have a look. The link should be going into the chat at some point. So, and it's also there on my slide if you want to go to the collection. So introducing the project in your words and our Dialect and Heritage Project. So what we're doing and what I'm doing, and as an engagement officer, we're retracing the steps of the Survey of English Dialects. We're now currently kind of 4 or 5 months in post now, and we've been reaching out to communities and asking people to share their words. And we'll be doing cutting edge dialect research, which I'll be telling you about in a second. But we're also sharing our archive through public engagement like this. We're going to roadshow all our events. We're going to be traveling around the country, and we're going to be doing exhibitions at the partner museums, which I'll tell you about in a bit. And we're also creating volunteering opportunities, and it's a really important way of getting involved. And that could be through oral history recording or helping out at events. There's lots of different opportunities. And mainly we want to celebrate dialect and preserve it for the future. So yeah, we want everyone to come on board and take part. We've got a new survey. It's not got so many questions this time. It's only about 3 pages long as opposed to a book of questions, and that's going to be available online, and everyone can take part wherever they are in the world. Yeah, so it's going to be, and then what we're doing with all our research is we will publish it in a few years' time, and people will be able to continue using that as a resource. So back to you. I've got some more questions. Do you know what these are? Just giving me a break from talking so much, but do you know what these are? Battle twigs, can you guess? Cutchy bells, forking robins? Put your answers in the chat. I'd love to know what you think that is. Or even if you know it. These are words that were recorded by the SED. And we're really interested in seeing if they're still being used. So Sadie Smith has said she thinks they might be plants. No, they're not plants. Lisa Harris has just put a string of question marks. George has guessed it correctly. They are earwigs, and that is correct. So yes, they're all earwigs. So battle twigs was used, or is maybe still used in the northern counties. Cutchy bells is a word from Somerset, and forking robins is used for in Yorkshire. Okay, we've got another go. Okay, what do you think these four mean? They're all from the same, all mean the same word. Glazy, glib, saucy, slake. It's I'll give you a clue. It's something to do with the weather. George is suggesting a drink. No. Kate's suggesting foggy. Foggy's close. Snowy. Salma. Yeah, even closer. Thanks for your suggestions. And Cloudy's coming in. Drizzle, murky, light rain. Oh, they're streaming in now. Misty. Well, it also means slippery or icy. Icy. Barney, you got it. So Glazy's from Berkshire. Glib is from Cambridgeshire. Saucy's from Hertfordshire. And Slake is from Worcestershire. Worcestershire. Can't say that one. Right. And then the last one. Anyone know what this is? It's an animal. Yeah, you've guessed it. It is a hedgehog. And furze is a Yorkshire word, I believe, for a hedge, a dialect word for hedge. So that's where furze pig comes from. And Lisa Harris is saying a hedgehog and a snail. Yes, Lisa, you've spotted this. You spotted the one that's kind of like the red herring. Hodmedod is both used in Suffolk for a snail and a hedgehog, but the others are all used for hedgehog. Okay, so continuing, thank you so much for all your responses there. Why are East Anglian dialects important? Why am I in the Museum of East Anglian Life sharing the dialect here? It was very important for the project, and East Anglian dialect remains to be really important to dialect studies. It's a fascinating, diverse dialect area. It's thought to be the place where English was first spoken, and its dialects have therefore a lot to teach us about the history and development of language. It's notoriously difficult to imitate, and people often confuse it with kind of West Country accents, but it's very clearly very different. If any of you've watched The Dig recently, you'll know that Ralph Fiennes has been critically acclaimed. He was taught by Charlie Haylock. His accent there has been revered as a very good example of someone trying to do one. And if you're from East Anglia, have you ever been mistaken for being Australian? A lot of people have been saying that they have. East Anglian English is also thought to have contributed to the development of Australian and other Southern Hemisphere varieties of English. Yes, so Mark, sorry, I'm just looking at your comments here. Mark has just said the Australian and New Zealand connection is important, and the second vowel shift is also found in rural Suffolk and Essex speech. And you might, in the audio recordings that I've been sharing with you, or have shared, and I will be sharing with you, you might be able to hear that Australian kind of influence, or the other way around. And there's lots of rich variations in the three counties and that we're looking at here, Suffolk, Norfolk and Essex. We've talked about hodmedod, and we've got dodman, dodders from Norfolk, and hodmedod from Suffolk. A word for splinter is different in each Suffolk, Norfolk and Essex. You've got slither in Suffolk, sliver in Essex, and shiver in Norfolk. So it's just, there's just so much in East Anglian dialect that we can discover, and also much of East Anglian vocabulary reflects the history and tradition. The history and traditional ways of life in the area, and the Norfolk word for sweets. I don't know if people know this one. Cushies is probably related to kushti, and which means good, and you might know that from Only Fools and Horses. But both of those words derive from Romany and represent the linguistic influence of the traveller communities that have been in East Anglia since the 1500s. And the Survey of English Dialects in the 50s came to the East Anglia, and they visited 34 locations here, and these are the locations, and 91 people took part in the survey. And we are actually currently looking for people, the descendants of the people who took part, the informants that took part. We would really like to meet people, and we'd also like to meet people who are from these villages who've family history goes back a long time. We're interested because we will, or we might want to record your dialect and contribute it to the project. So please do get in touch if you have any connections to those villages or know of anybody who have a long history. We've also got a link in the chat if you want to see that list at a later date and share it with other people. And I've just seen that Janet Small has said that she knows splinter as a skelf. Janet, where are you from? Please let me know. I've not heard skelf before. And here are two of the informants looking really lovely. This is a photo that was in one of the response books of Mr. and Mrs. Clark from Ashwellthorpe in Norfolk, and this was taken in 1962. And I have a recording of them. I have a recording of, actually it is Anna Clark talking about her journey to Norwich on her bike, falling off a bike, and she's on this journey because she's going to pick up some fish for her husband to sell, and she uses a particular dialect word, bloaters, which is a herring, a lightly smoked herring for immediate eating. And you'll also notice her dropping her S when she's talking about distance, so she says 10 mile instead of 10 miles. It's very common grammar from Norfolk of the time. So here we go. I hope you can all hear.
The dialect of Ashwellthorpe, Norfolk. Mrs. Anna Clark, a native, aged 80, housewife, recorded in her home on the 22nd of January 1957 by W.N. Francis.
Well, I used to go right past the station, through the village and to Pondon Hall, and I used to do that from 1922 till that finished. That was over 20 years, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I collected that.
You went on the bike?
On the bike, yes. And then one time, while I didn't have any work, and that I used to go to Norwich, bike to Norwich, bring home some fish for him to sell.
How far is that?
10 mile,
10 mile there and 10 mile back.
yes. He kept saying, I'll go to Norwich and get a box of bloaters and sell them. He kept saying, and I got up one morning a while. When I got to the market, they were all sold. So that was that. The next time I went, the wind had got up time I was there, and coming home, great big branch off the tree had blown. I went plunk into that. The night went out, and I had some matches, and I got up, and that was all right. That was a moonlight night, that was.
Wonderful example of the Norfolk accent there from Anna. She's one of the rare interviews with women as part of the collection. So I'm really pleased to be able to share that with you today. And I also want to share you someone from Essex as well. We've had Suffolk and Norfolk, but this is George Metzen, a very short clip of him. He's from Doddinghurst in Essex, and he's talking about ploughing, and here's the kind of old horse-drawn ploughs from our collection at the museum. And he, when you're listening to this, listen out for the word beaver. This is a dialect word for a late morning snack.
The dialect of Doddinghurst, Essex. Mr. George Metzen, a native, age 66, recorded in his home in August 1961 by Stanley Ellis.
Did they have a great deal of horse ploughing then?
Oh yes, there was all down the horse ploughing. They used to go at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they used to come in at 10:30 for beaver, and they used to leave off at 2:30 in the afternoon, and then they had the rest of the day to finish the horses up and beat them up and clean them up.
A very short one there. Actually, a lot of the recordings are about the use of horses and how horses aren't used so much. And of course, we're very proud of the Suffolk Punch around here, and we've got lots more recordings of its kind, but extremely long days. They used to work on the fields, and very, very interesting. You might know other words for snack from around the country: docky, bait, snap. The list goes on, depending on what industry you worked for or where you are in the country. So that brings me on, kind of almost coming to the end now of my presentation, to kind of the current research that we're doing, and it's slightly different from the SED. It's preserving, but it's also going a step further, and we're looking into kind of the social aspects of dialect. We're really interested in, as I said before, which words are still being used, but crucially why they're still being used. We're interested in why certain words get passed on, why we keep using them, and also what are our relationships to these words. So one that comes to mind straight away in Suffolk is on the huff, for something that's wonky, something that's skew whiff. Why is that the one that everyone knows from Norfolk? From Suffolk. It's just interesting to hear from everyone what they think about these things. And we're researching kind of two key things, are what we're calling adopted and inherited words, and these are words within our vocabulary that shouldn't really be there. They're not from where we're from. They've been picked up elsewhere. So adopted words are words we've picked up from others. They're so, for instance, from our friends, colleagues, or partners, and they're often picked up when we move around the country from because of work or school or university. And two examples of this, and you'll have your examples, and please do share them. I went to university in Leeds, so I picked up the word ginnel, and also the word which is alleyway, and pot for cast, which I don't think anybody uses anymore. I'd love to know if people do. And the other one's Mardy. And then I also had a friend from Glasgow who would always use the word steaming for drunk, and it reminds me of him, and now I still want to continue using that. And then inherited words. So inherited words are the words that are passed down to us, often from our parents and grandparents who grew up in a different part of the country. So you might not have actually ever met the person who said them. We call them the donor, never met the donor, or you may have never even been to that place. So I, as I said, I was born in London, and two words that kind of stick out and that I know I've got from my mother, who was born in Essex and went to school in Suffolk, are Gusgog for gooseberry. And as I said before, I'm a masher. I mash my tea. I let the tea mash. And those are two words commonly used in East Anglia. So when I was saying them in London, where I grew up, nobody understood what I was saying. So and I hold on to them because it kind of is part of my heritage, and I want to keep using them and passing them on. I want to pass them on. So please share your inherited and adopted words with us in the chat today. I'm just looking through some of your comments. We've got some good ones. Jenny says in Shrewsbury, a ginnel is a shut. That's interesting. And Mark Newbrooks also knows Mardy Bum from the Arctic Monkeys song. Yeah, we're all saying that now because of that song. Helen said, does anyone else say dip chooky for a boiled egg with toast dipped in it? Oh, I don't know. Does anyone say dip chooky for the egg? I love that. Yeah. And guzgogs, yes. And guzgogs is an interesting word. I've done a little bit of research into that. It's often used as a word for children, and also kind of etymology wise, up north, in Northumberland, the old word for Gusgog was groser, from the French groser, and they think it's because of the links with Scotland and France and the Catholic link there, and so that word has kind of stayed. And then that could have led to goose and bob and gob and those kind of things that to do with a lump. So yeah, there's like kind of a really nice etymology to do with the way that a word sounds, the relationships of people and politics. I mean, it's a wonderful word if you go if you go back far enough. Yes, so, and then just to like wrap up before we take your questions, and I'm loving the things that are coming through on the chat. I just want to talk a bit about how you can get involved if you'd like to get involved. And you can follow us on Twitter at Dialect Heritage, and on Instagram at Dialect and Heritage. We're looking for volunteers all the time. We have several partner museums, but you can become a dialect field worker and help us do field working recordings. You can do transcription of the recordings. You can volunteer at the museum, or you can be a project publicity advocate, someone who helps us out with a bit of our marketing. But also, we are going to be touring around the villages I just mentioned, and we are looking for partners, people who would like to host our exhibition, would like to groups that might want to need to come and have a talk and do surveys with, lots of ways to get involved. This is our current survey. I don't know if you can see this on the little screen, but it's called the Big Dialect Hunt. And you can do a survey like that. And then we've also got these little postcards as well, Merple postcards for inherited and adopted words, which people can fill. And we're going to have a website soon, so please keep your eyes on social media for when we do finally launch our website. And then if you want to get in touch with me, my email's there. You can request a survey if you want to do one at home. Or if you have any questions about the project, please do get in touch. And the partner museums, if you're not near East Anglia, are these 5. So we've got Avonscroft Museum of Historic Buildings in Worcestershire, Dales Countryside Museum and Rydell Folk Museum in Yorkshire, and then we've got Weald and Downland Living Museum in West Sussex as well. And they're doing the same stuff as I'm doing, and all doing a great job in spreading the word and celebrating their local dialects as well. So I'm going to move on to questions now, and introduce. I've also got Rosemary Hall with me. She's going to join us for this questions. She's our dialect researcher. So you've got both of us if you want to ask any more questions about what I've spoken about today. Welcome, Rosemary. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thanks, Laura.
That's no problem. Rosemary, what's your opinion of dialect, and are you proud of yours?
Yes, I am fascinated in dialects. I'm also a bit of a mongrel. I've got a mishmash from all over the place. So I sound mostly Southern British, but my parents both came from the West Midlands, so I've got a couple of West Midlands words in my vocabulary, which I hold very dearly. And I also have some sort of standard pronunciation features that don't quite match up with the rest of my southern features. So I say Bath and Castle rather than Bath and Castle, because that's what my parents said and my peers and when I was growing up. So I love dialect. I studied different dialects from around the world, and really excited to be the research assistant for the project. So it's been fantastic watching everybody's responses in the survey there. I've just seen the question on the screen, George's question. It's a really great question about, do we know why there were fewer Suffolk samples compared to the neighbouring counties? And somebody, Alf, asked that same question earlier on, and I popped a response in the chat, and that is that the villages were selected according to their location, and also the number of people living there. So the population size in each village. So there's no prejudice against Suffolk, not to fear, George. Anyone else got any other questions for us?
Yeah, I'm just looking through what other people have been saying. In Oz, older people called cinema picture theatres rather than cinema. Love that. Your sister's a cabbage with roots in the ground. Your brother's a goosegog, all hairy and round. Oh wow, Mark, I love that.
I think that's a really lovely example there, Mark, of where dialect and sort of folk song and nursery rhyme often overlap. And one of the things in our collection, the Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture, is obviously in order to collect this dialect in the 1950s and 60s, when the researchers were making recordings, they had long conversations with people about their lives. And that means that they also collected all sorts of things like nursery rhymes and folk songs and legends and sayings and ways of life, all sorts of, especially farming. But I don't know whether that particular one will have cropped up in the archive, and that's a really lovely one. Also, the sort of thing that we're interested in hearing from people when they tell us about traditions.
And then I've got another nice one from George, actually. He says, I say linging. I haven't a clue where it's from. Easy to understand what it means, though. You ling along. And it reminds me of lollop. I think a lot of people say lollop along. I don't know, Rosemary, have you heard of that one? I haven't heard ling.
Actually, I'm really interested to see that in the chat, because ling is a word that I recently was told is newly being used to mean sort of attractive, but I haven't heard linging in that sense. That's a lovely example. Barney's asking, do you consider song to be traditions? And yes, absolutely. There's lots and lots of lovely folk song in our archive. We're not specifically collecting song at the moment, but it's always really interesting to hear about it. Yeah,
and I just to add, there's a lot of pub songs and folk songs, singing folk songs in pubs, and specifically around like Suffolk, Blackshall and Aldborough, and you can request to listen to those in the Leeds archive. I would really suggest it. There's a wonderful lot there. Oh, and Tim Ainsley's also said, on the drag for being late, is this from Suffolk? Yes, I believe that is from Suffolk, and I know a lot of people from Suffolk who said that, and they have contributed that word to our current research, so thank you.
That's a fantastic one. I didn't know that one.
Yes, it means, for being late. It's brilliant. Lisa Harris says, I'm often on the drag. And I know drag as being like, dragging a cigarette, so I don't know if there's a link to smoking there or where that comes from. Again, we have to do research into all of these lovely words.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that one comes from, but that's a lovely one. Yeah.
Janet says, it explains why people look at me confused here.
Yeah, and I've noticed that Mark Newbrook has mentioned Peter Trudgill, who's done an awful lot of research on East Anglian dialects. So Peter Trudgill is really the expert on East Anglia when it comes to dialectologists. So if anybody's interested in reading even more sort of specific focused research on this area, Peter Trudgill was the first person to apply what we call sociolinguistic methods in the UK, and he did that in East Anglia. So you can think of East Anglia as being the first place where modern dialectology, modern sociolinguistics really was done. So we know perhaps more about how dialect is used in East Anglia than anywhere else in the UK.
And in fact, I am in touch with Peter, So, and the project is in touch with him, so we hope to make some more connections with him further down the line. Lisa Harris has just said, doesn't drag come from, or is it based on the drag shoe used to slow down a wagon? And I love this, Lisa, because it goes back to what I was talking about before, about language connecting us to the land and industry and kind of the past. And if we're still saying that and it's related to wagons, that's you know, it really is a direct link to the past. Thank you. Do we have an archive of Suffolk dance? It's a good question, Barney. I'll have to get back to you on that one. If you want to pop that in an email, I can do some research into that for you. We do have we have the archive of folk life studies as well. So I hope I'm not echoing too much.
There's I'm not 100% certain what we have on dance in the archive, but Barney, if you have a look at the Leeds Archive of Vernacular Culture, on the Leeds Special Collections website, you'll be able to search for things like dance and filter for what's associated with Suffolk. So there's a really good search function on the Special Collections page where you can access a lot of the collection that's already been digitized. So I'd recommend having a look there. Owen is asking about transcription. Not just transcribing the words, but capturing the spirit of the conversation. That's a really interesting question. I mean, I think different methods of transcription are used for different purposes. We're creating transcriptions that we know linguists will be able to use when they're analysing language and language change in the future. So we're using quite a particular type of transcription model, but volunteers who are interested in transcribing will provide instructions and training and everything for that. So do get in touch if you have more questions about transcription.
Are there any more questions you'd like to ask us? I've seen I'm already getting emails of people requesting surveys, which is great.
Oh, fantastic. Laura, how about your dialect story? I know you mentioned that you've got some East Anglian heritage.
Well, yeah. So I guess I'm from London. In fact, I say I'm kind of collecting, because I often thought that I didn't really have an accent, or dialect, but everyone does, as I'm learning. And so yeah, I've got some like words from London which I love, and I'm going to hold on to, like caned for something that hurts, or buff or bare. So buff is like when something's good looking, or bare is like lots of. But these are like old words that people were using. Well, they're now considered old. They're from the 90s. They're not really used anymore. And I also use had, the word had for what's it called, it or tag, you know, the game you play in the
really?
playground. And
That's
I don't think that's used very widely. And then I've also been trying to figure out what I used to say at school for the we've got a collection of words for truce, and I don't know. So I'm from Ealing in West London, but I could swear we used to cross our fingers and go packs. I used to swear we used to do that, but nobody else I can find says that from my childhood. So yeah, so those are the kind of the ones that stick in my head that are very hyper local to where I grew up.
There are lots of those words for stopping a game or truce in a game, aren't there? And really different all over the country. I know there's some people say crosses and some people say fanites, packs, all sorts. Someone's asking, Lisa, do you have to get to Leeds or one of the museums to get involved, or can you get involved remotely? You don't necessarily need to be able to get to Leeds at all. We've got these 5 partner museums in different parts of the country, so being able to get to one of them can help, but you can also get involved remotely with transcription. So if in doubt, do get in touch with Laura. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also need, help kind of making connections and tracking down the descendants of the SED. So if you're really into genealogy or local history, and you kind of have those skills and would like to lend them to us and help us find those people, then that's a good job to do remotely. You don't have to be at the museum. So things like that. Janet's saying, does anyone else say back of for time? For example, I'll meet you the back of 2, meaning just after 2. Yeah, and then in Leeds, time is a kind of an interesting one. So if you're working 9 till 5, you're working 9 while 5 in Leeds. And then Lisa Harris says we say 5 and 20 past. There's a very old way of counting. If you say 5 and 20 past 7, and it's actually, that must have roots in Anglo-Saxon and Germanic languages, because that's how they still say time there in Germany. Kate's asked, what's next for the project? So yes, at the museum in the winter months, I'm specifically now, we're preparing for doing oral history recordings, and we've recruited about 14 volunteers to take part in at training, and then we'll be recording the descendants of the SED informants through to January, which is very exciting. I'm really excited to get that going. And then we're doing a touring exhibition, which will be going to 25 villages around East Anglia, all about the relationship of language and food. And next year, the Museum of East Anglian Life is turning into the Museum of Food. So this is an exciting time for us, and so it will be lots of dialect words related to food. My favourite, a Norfolk one, is scoff, to start off the conversation. Thank you, Kate.
It's really lovely to see you all chatting about the words that you're using, and do carry on the conversation at home and let us know what the results are. You might find, if you're talking about dialect around the dinner table or with your kids or your grandkids or your parents or your grandparents, you might start to wonder and figure out where some of the words that you use have come to you from, and we'd love to hear about that. So do tweet us or catch us on Instagram or send us an email.
Yeah, and Tim says, we use scoff in Suffolk. I think scoff is one of the dialect words that's now become more generally used in everyday language. I like it when the dialect word hides itself. We don't think it's dialect anymore. Will the session still be available on the YouTube later? Sorry, I missed the start. Oh yeah, I totally forgot to tell everyone. It will remain on the Museum of East Anglian Life's YouTube channel for the foreseeable future, and we'll be sharing it with you in an email, and also through our social media as well. So yeah, opportunity to watch it all the way from the start again.
That's lovely. Question from Jenny. Does anyone say whim wham? My dad was making something secret. He'd say it's a whim wham for a mustard mill, a way of saying shh, mind your own business. I haven't heard whim wham for a mustard mill, but I have heard wigwam for a goose's bridle. Anyone else? There's lots of those different variations of that same way of sort of shutting up the kids or telling them to sort of buzz off while you're doing something secret, maybe wrapping the Christmas presents or something. Does anyone else have any of those? It's a lovely and rather strange saying. Thanks, Jenny.
Mm-hmm. So we've been talking about an hour now, but I think we've had lots of food for thought and dialect for thought. And I'm wondering, are there any last questions? And if not, we'll wrap up. It's been wonderful talking to everybody and hearing all your words, and yeah, and I can't wait to be in touch with some of you going forward. And yes, as we're just wrapping up, just a few more announcements. So yes, the Being Human Festival is running until the 20th, so please look out for their festival program. The links are in the chat, and also the Festival of Social Science runs until the end of the month. We're also, Rosemary and I are going to be doing this event, not entirely the same, but quite different, and we'll go more into depth about East Anglian dialects and the project and have surveys. But we're going to be doing this in person on Saturday, this Saturday coming up on the 20th, at the Museum of East Anglian Life from 1 to 4. So if you want to join us at the museum, it's totally free. Come and have a cup of tea and a cake, and listen to some more excerpts, and yeah, come along and do the survey. That would be great. Please tell everyone.
Yeah, bring your questions. We're really looking forward to meeting you, and I'm especially looking forward to the cake that Laura's promised.
Thank you, everyone. I'm getting some nice thank yous. Thank you so much. Okay, we'll wave and say goodbye now. Bye.